to quote the prominent, most important political thinker of our generation, a lot of white people can only view socio-political conflict through the myopic lens of their own self-actualization. Did you get my reference?
Yeah, but I think like most people can only really.
Dudes generally can still look hot if they're a little dirty, a little messed up. I don't know. I kind of like.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie,
but a lot of
I fucking love women that have like a little bit of engine grease on them. To be honest,
Which
I
is-
think that's really
that's-
cute. That
Wait!
seems like
Hold on. Do you think that's comparable? Do you think a human
Yeah.
woman? Do you think a human woman? I didn't like analyzing her body type and analyzing a fictional vampire lady. Do you think those are comparable? In two,
yeah, I
in-
definitely say
do you
that.
think-
If people are like complaining that the character is like over muscular, yeah,
Dude,
absolutely.
I dressed up for you guys. I hope you like it.
Very scaly.
Are you calling me dry?
No, I think fish are like generally wet, aren't they?
Yeah, but when you call a human scaly, it means they're dry.
Oh.
So you've just insulted me. So now we're enemies.
Listen, it's winter months, fam. My foot skin is like absolutely friggin' deteriorating at this point.
Should we all compare foot skins?
I think I'm okay.
Mine's really bad. I need to get like a different lotion or something because it's just fucking awful.
Cool. Well, I was thinking you guys can do your 1 minute intros or shorter if you'd like. I figure since this is, has prior information that prior information and context that you guys have with each other. I'll let you guys be the experts in that. But what I have lined out here is how for the topics, how politics and political ideology should affect media analysis. And then the other topic is anonymity online in the political sphere. So, yeah. Is that good for you guys?
Yeah, I'm good with either starting or finishing, either or.
Okay. Who wants to go? Do you want to go first or last, Jangles?
Yes. I'll go first.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justin. I go by Jangles, ScienceLad on the internet. Me and Flamenco got into what some would consider an argument, a screaming match on the last Stardust panel. Feeding into that drama farm. So we talked about two things, one of which was media analysis. If this sounds really boring, it kind of is. I disagreed with his interpretation of H. Farmer Guy's interpretation of Ruby, the fucking anime by Rooster Teeth. But I think there's a bigger discussion to be had on there on like how we should do media analysis when it comes to political ideology. Should we? I believe that it's inescapable, and that also got into anonymity online, which is a very interesting subject to have. Obviously, we should all be safe online, but what does that constitute, and why do some people refuse? Why might some people be motivated to scrub any sort of mention of their personal life online? Is there something to be said about like why don't you want to be associated with the things that you say? What distance from those views? Why would that benefit you? Why would that harm you? I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, so I guess my fundamental position on media analysis, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with deriving political readings from media analysis, especially if, things are going to have analogous things to IRL. I think that there's a common misnomer, with people who are a little annoyed with sort of preachy, sort of hand-holdy political ideologies sort of being spoon-fed in media as a desire to not have politics in your media. I think politics in media is like a pretty good thing. It depends on how well it's done. And there's definitely a scope of these things that can generate from also personal subjective tastes. I think that when you do that, though, you do need to be careful because politics is extremely subjective and your own political values are extremely subjective. And if you're not careful, it can lead you to saying some very insane things, I would say. And with anonymity, I believe that I think that back in the old days of the internet was a much more anonymous place, which led to a little bit less emphasis on who a person is. And as we continue to get more and more access to the internet and more non-tech savvy people access it, there seems to be a drive to have your face and your personal information I guess, also use as a means in which to attack people, which I think is also pretty bad.
Okay.
Cool.
That's it for mine. Yeah, that's it for my opening statement.
Since the second topic is probably going to be a little bit spicier,
Mhm.
if I want to start with the media analysis.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Cool. So there's a joke on the internet that I think actually holds a lot of weight. Obviously, it's simplistic, but there's two genders in media, in movies, and video games. You got male and political. There's two sexualities, straight and political. There's two gender identities, cis and political. Now, I think a lot of there is no form of media that is apolitical. In fact, the notion that there can be an apolitical piece of media and a political piece of media, the very notion that those two things can be separate is itself a political statement, because what gets to be determined as not political? What ideology?
How would you
what
determine
messaging?
apolitical?
Anything that is political is going to be influenced by the outside world, be it its norms, be it its standards, be it the status quo, be it whatever morals you want to have come across. Everything that is in media right now is to be consumed by a particular group of people, and that particular group of people have particular morals, they have particular status quos, they have particular references that they'll get, not get. So everything is political in the sense that it is going to be consumed by people who have been subjected to an ideology based on living in a society. We live in a society, baby! And so the notion that something can be apolitical is itself a political statement, because usually what it means, it conforms to the status quo and doesn't rub people the wrong way.
I would disagree. I think there can be apolitical media. I don't think there's any overarching political narratives or overarching social commentary in Super Mario World or anything like that. Unless you want to go into a really dystopic thing where the residents in the Mushroom Kingdom get turned into the blocks that Mario punches and shatters with his fist.
Isn't that way more interesting than? There's a lot more interesting.
It's a lot darker. It's a lot darker when you think of it that way. I think, again, like I said before, I think there's a difference between something that has a very clear-cut, ideological message versus something that's a little bit more open-ended. I think the best, sources of media are things that actually challenge the person to think a little bit more, instead of just agreeing with whatever the author says and not having, clear and concise what is right and what is wrong. I think that was what really made Game of Thrones a really good television series up until the point where
it's 6/8 of a good television series.
Yeah, and then when they get into this is the clear good guys, this is the clear bad guys, and it didn't work out super well.
Yeah, but that's different than political versus not political, right? Something isn't political when it has a clear-cut ideological bent to it, right? The very notion that there can be open-ended questions, that is political, because what's an open-ended question? Well, it's going to be determined by the society in which you live. And introducing, these are fictions, so all of that nuance, all of those different perspectives that are introduced as just as valid as another, all that stuff is introduced by the creators of that media. And so, it doesn't mean it's political or not political. The ambiguity or conciseness or directness of a political message doesn't make it political or not. Just like politics doesn't have to be just overarching narratives. If you want to get really down to it, the notion that a dude will save a princess, that's kind of political. In the very, very bare bones sense. I'm not saying it has any sort of Democrat, Republican ideology, but the notion that a woman is a goal, is to save or something like that, even that has stuff that's baked in. I'm not calling it good or bad. I'm just saying that it is a narrative that is interwoven throughout our society, and that's kind of where we get that references, save the princess from the monster. This didn't come from nowhere. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily know if that's a inherently political thing, because just of its nature being a sort of trope that's already existed before, and whether or not certain ideals informed on why that trope exists before, or even if the people who actually understand that trope inherently, or if they're just using something that they like know is like
but
a
all
useful
politics
goal.
all politics are informed by things that came before them.
Right, but I'm asking, like, do you think that like it's possible that the Japanese game developers for Mario had this in mind in terms of like these Western tropes, whether or not they're super exposed to them? I think that's like, yeah.
Well, that's another thing. A lot of like this is like probably the big argument that I'm going to say, that politics does not have to be a political message doesn't have to be intentionally, knowingly placed into a game to subvert anything. Going back to my original argument, the very absence of a political ideology in a piece of media is itself a political statement. What is determined as political, what is determined as force, and what is determined as natural is then essentially appeal to the status quo of whatever time and culture that you're primarily marketing this piece of media towards.
I think I don't necessarily know if it has to push against the status quo, though. I guess the other question is, what is the status quo?
I'm also not saying it has to push against the status quo in order to be political, but the notion that there is a status quo that that's probably going to be less salient than any sort of thing against the status quo that is going to be noticed. Like, for example, if you put a gay character into a piece of media, is it forced representation? Are you forcing diversity? Are you forcing gay people into your piece of media? The answer is yeah. But you're forcing anyone into that piece of media. You're forcing straight people in there. You're forcing white people into your piece of media because it's fiction. But one is more salient. One is a little bit more subversive of the status quo, as in what is considered the default. And so the presence of a
I would even argue that I would even argue right now at this point that like adding in like a checkbox of like things to tick off for being in a piece of media is like now the status quo, and it can get kind of noticeable. Like I think the bigger example, like the most recent example I have is like Amazon just released their live action version of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. And like one of the key plot points, at least at the very beginning, is that all of the main characters are from like a super backwater mountain town that like hasn't had really any noticeable changes for the last like 3,000 years. It's been pretty much out of the way. They're not really even sure what country they're a part of. Like they have like a map, but it's very weird. They haven't seen a tax collector in like 600 years. But in the show specifically, it has basically like a extremely ethnically diverse like population within the thing, which again, this is a very small mountain town, probably wouldn't happen that way. And especially it gets weird because like the main character is distinct because he's like a foot taller than everyone else and has bright red hair while everyone else has like brown or black hair. And I don't know, it seems like that was specifically done to like meet a quota. You know what I mean?
But you also, this notion that there's a quota that must be met, like a checkbox of identities, this very notion that that's a thing that exists, it's also a political statement. Like if something is mostly white people, mostly straight people, or entirely straight people, and all of that is a conscious choice, but because it's considered the default, people don't notice it as a conscious choice, despite the fact that it is. So there needs to be, so it's this notion that there needs to be a reason to deviate from default identities, and that makes something political, versus the fact that like everything is fictional. All of these are conscious choices made by on the part of the author and the artist that make the piece of media. They're all conscious choices, but one group is seen as default, and there must be a reason to deviate from that. And one gets to be seen as default, and therefore, if you have this, well, that was just your default character. That was your default character. So it's perceived as not a conscious choice, even though it very, very much is so.
Yeah, I think that though, when we get into that sort of thing, especially with casting, we get into like I guess it changes the dynamics of what's going on. Again, like this like small mountain town later on becomes like becomes like
a small mountain town was like isolated for 3,000 years.
Yes.
If you can get on board with that notion, you should be able to get on board with any other sort of like suspension of disbelief, right?
Not when, again, the main distinction from the main character is because he's not from there. His like father found him as a baby and brought him there, and that's why he looks so different, because he's actually part of like a weird desert Irish clan that has like bright red hair and all that sort of stuff. It's
set in our universe.
No, it's set in like a
Who cares,
medieval
dude?
fictional universe.
Who cares?
Because it really, well, what the other part is that later on in the story, at least in the books, like because the world is like going to shit, there's a lot of refugees, and with that they bring like new sort of things. This town always has like thatch roofs, and these new
You can
people
still
bring
explore
in.
all of that, unless it's historical fiction. I really don't see the problem.
It
in
is
this.
kind of historical fiction. It is kind of like it is sort of a historical sort of like with medieval parallels. You know,
With medieval
the sort of
parallels,
thing
it's
of like
not set in. You said it's not set in our world, so
right.
like, it's drawing inspiration from, but that doesn't mean that like you can take artistic liberties. Like,
Mhm.
if it's an inspiration, like you don't have to be faithful to it. You're just taking inspiration to like that inspiration is going to be the cultural shorthand for like what story beats are we going to have in the society. But there's a reason Game of Thrones was coded as somewhat medieval, not because it was like, you know, because you only have a very limited pool of imagination to draw from, and so you're probably going to say, oh, it's dragons, it's medieval weaponry, medieval armor, that's the technology, so that's what I'm going to draw from this imaginary world with magic and dragons and all that stuff. Just because it has inspiration from doesn't mean it needs to be historically accurate.
Well, I'm not even arguing that it needs to be historically accurate. I'm just saying that a small mountain town like this probably wouldn't have like that sort of level of genetic diversity. You would probably have that in a more like metropolitan area, like one of the like main capitals of the thing or anything like that. And they
Guys,
do have that.
Could I
It just
cut in
seems
really
like-
quick?
Mhm.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for the raid, Nick. Really appreciate that, guys. Welcome to the stream. We're in the middle of a debate with Jangles and Flamenco, and they are discussing political influence in media, if I am
Yeah.
understanding correctly. So
That's where it's kind of going, yeah.
yeah.
Sort of. Yeah, so there's that notion that like there must be like if people have different skin colors within an area, they must be like genetically diverse. But that's also a very poor marker. Like if they were all the same skin color, they could have just as much genetic diversity. If they were all white, or if they were all black, if they were all
Also, thank you, Augie, for
of Asian descent, like they could all have enormous like,
sending
genetic
your
diversity
people.
within them. Just because it's baked into our head, because we live in a society, because it's baked into our head that skin color equals like significant genetic difference. That's kind of what, like the politics that we're looking at. They could.
I mean, the main character has like the same skin color as all the other characters. A little shade finer, but his like height and his bright red hair is what really distincts him. So I didn't really say anything about race.
Well, you
I don't
did.
know.
You said that they were ethnically diverse. You said that they were really ethnically diverse.
No, I've said that
Did
they
say
were
that.
like specifically. It seemed like it was like a check mark for like,
What-
oh yeah,
what-
we have
okay,
all
then what were
this.
you talking about?
Hmm?
Then what were you talking about? I think
The
it's very
show
reasonable for me
versus
to
the
assume that.
book.
I think it's very reasonable for me to assume that you were saying that they had different skin colors and different like ethnic backgrounds for like the actors. It was very
I
reasonable
think
assumption.
ethnic differences are different than like racial
Okay,
differences.
Yes, but usually
yeah.
what people mean is like there's some black people, there's
Well,
like some Asian
I'm explaining
people.
I'm
Hispanic
explaining what I
people.
mean. I'm explaining what I mean.
Okay.
I'm just saying that it sets
did
it
you mean?
away from having a like isolated mountain town that hasn't. like,
Okay, so
seen
what were
people
the
for, like,
ethnic
3,000
differences that you were
years.
alluding to then?
All sorts of.
What was the show called?
differences. Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Time, Amazon.
Mhm.
Cast. Wheel of Time, Amazon cast. Yeah, there's a black person. There's
Mhm.
a couple of different skin tones in there.
Mhm.
A little racially ambiguous, but like, yeah, you were I still think that you were alluding to like ethnicity and skin color.
No, I'm saying when I'm talking about that in terms of the book specifically, because again, like the main character is, it goes into like other things too, and I just don't think they're going to be able to like explore that in the show now with how they've gone into it. I guess we can also then get into like the main thing that we were talking about before on last Saturday, which was
Rawubi.
yeah. Which I thought that like Harris kind of goes with the same thing that a lot of people have kind of gone on. Honestly, like I watched another person's coverage of like the same topic, and I think like wow.
So what was
I
Harris's?
don't want to accuse people of plagiarism, but yeah. So
what was
like,
Harris's problem with So there's a fictional race called the Faunus, which exists
Mhm.
so that you can have cat girls and cat
Yeah.
boys. All right. So what was your problem with Harris's description of why the Faunus were a problem?
So one of the main contentions that I think he had was that the main antagonists for the first 3 parts were a group called the White Fang, which originally started as like a semi-civil rights organization that later on took a more militant and terroristic aspect. And I don't really think that this is necessary, because like any sort of group can be subverted by people who want to use it for more violent,
Of course it
desires or
can.
tendencies.
But you also see how like maybe having the marginalized group be the civil rights organization for the marginalized group being the main bad guys. You see that maybe
They're not really the main bad guys, though.
They're one of the main humanoid bad guys, yeah, other than like the demons and stuff.
They're being subverted by further subverted by a more overarching antagonist that is using them for their own purposes, though.
Yeah, you still see how like the way that they're characterized as unambiguously evil. Like the way
I don't think they're characterized as unambiguously evil.
The way that they're written in the show, they are cannon fodder. They're meant to be like these humanoid-shaped enemies. I'm just gonna call them humans for short. They're meant to be these humanoid enemies that are routinely like dispatched and assumed killed, like as cannon fodder. And it's like you're not supposed to feel bad about it, because if let's say we had a marginalized group that was fighting for civil rights, like, wouldn't you feel a little bit weird that your main characters were like destroying them and killing them?
Are they currently engaged in acts of terrorism?
Well, that's how you make it palatable. They're like, well, they might have a point, but they're actually super evil. Like, they're written to be evil. These aren't real people.
Well,
so the
but
fact that you
later
make
on
the fact that you make this marginalized group, they might have a point. So that's complexity in our villains. But no, they're totally just straight up evil. They want to kill all the humans so they'll be dead, and that's how they get civil rights. They just kill all the humans and actually think that they're the superior race. So if you think about it, they're the real racists. Like, yeah, all that stuff textually in the story is fine.
Or the main antagonist for that plot is literally racist. Like, he literally just wants to kill all humans.
If you look at it in just the text, it's fine. But this story doesn't exist in its own world, all right? It's existing in our world, and the parallels that you can draw there are very obvious. Like, this was straight up an allegory for racism.
I don't think our civil rights movement like allocated a small island continent for like
the themes of the story are like that. You know that there's a lot of like the White Fang, the Black Panthers. There's a lot of like pretty direct allegories that you can make, and even if you don't,
but the Black Panthers didn't engage in terroristic organizations.
Yeah, but still, there's a lot of things that you can read into that in our current political landscape. Like, yeah, things used to be a lot worse, but now they're pretty good. And now this new group who's going to keep fighting for civil rights, well, they're just going too far and they're doing some terrorisms. There's a pretty easy way to like draw parallels between that and BL.
I mean, if you only offered that as the only like characterization, but then that group itself gets retaken over by people who are not disposed towards terrorism.
Okay, then
and not disposed
about,
towards
like, the first couple
like
of seasons.
Being subverted by literal. Well, so it has to be in like the first couple of seasons.
Well, because this story was written like on the seat of their pants. All right.
Right. No,
so,
I'm not arguing that it's a well-written story. I'm just saying that this criticism seems to fall flat on its face when you kind of take a look at the broader stroke of what had already been out there, because I think he references like the point in which it gets retaken over by people who are not inclined towards terrorism.
You're using a purely textual analysis, like an objective textual analysis. Like, the story, of course, will justify itself. Like, of course, the story in universe, like,
poorly, and that's not
in universe, of course.
The show, dude.
In universe, the White Fang are they're a terrorist organization. They're cannon fodder for a reason. You don't feel bad that they're killed because they are evil. However, they were still written that way to
Mm-hmm.
be in a minority group who used to be for civil rights, but now they've taken it too far. There's a lot of like criticism you could levy, like if you're going to explore this social issue. And yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, if you're exploring social bigotry for certain racial groups, that there's no way that these authors who were born in America, or I think they were born in America, they were born in our society, who are addressing these topics, there's absolutely no way that you can say like, no, they're probably like drawing inspiration, at least for the themes, if not the actual like where the text went. They're drawing themes from real life racial conflicts, and they did a shitty job. I don't
I
think
might
they're
even go
racist
so
or
far as
sequel white
say-
nationalists.
I might go so far as to say that they're probably writing from a stance of like prior media, because these things are pretty much analogous to like X-Men's Brotherhood of Mutants, which is
Avatar.
again
It's just Avatar.
I don't think
It's
Avatar
Avatar.
had like any racial
No.
overtones.
That part didn't, but like this shit, that was mostly a joke. But the show is basically
Oh.
just Avatar with other influences.
I mean,
But that wasn't being serious like that. We can. Like,
yeah, I would argue against that, but no, I think that like a large part of it's also just like the other media, because I could be wrong. I don't remember a whole lot about the production aspect of the show, but I think they also had Code Geass as like something there, and that had a
there's
very
a lot of
similar thing
influences.
with, like,
But there's still like the way that your piece of media is going to be read by the public that it's being made for. I think it is worthy of consideration. Like you can't just
Mhm.
explain it away to like, oh no, they're a terrorist group. You can't explain it away because like we don't consume media in a vacuum. A lot of the references that like
So
that
what's
are
the
required for
problem
media
with
analysis.
what's the problem with X-Men's Brotherhood of Mutants?
I'm not sure, I'm familiar with that one.
Okay, so Magneto hates humans. He really fucking hates humans, and humans are kind of assholes to mutants, and he wants to kill all the humans and make mutants the dominant species.
So depending on how you write that story,
Mhm.
well, one, like we have a fundamentally subjugated group. So I'm making an
Mhm.
assumption here. You can tell me if I'm wrong. That mutants are a marginalized group. They're seen as freaks. They're going to be hunted by humanity just because they're deemed to be dangerous and too different, right? Is that fair?
I would say that there is some merit to like the danger part, simply because like you've got mutants
Okay.
that can suck all the oxygen out of a room and like suffocate
Okay,
an
well,
entire
okay.
classroom and shit
Yeah,
like
okay.
that.
All right, we're not drawing any parallels to like real world like marginalization of
Right.
people. But let's say we have that. If you write a story where like we have this marginalized group who like has a point, they
Mhm.
are being subjugated, sometimes
Mhm.
violently, and maybe violence is going to be justified in response to it. But then you make
Mhm.
the leader of that group just just straight up villain. If you write him
Mhm.
to be just a straight up villain who is like, oh, he might have had a point, but he's taking it too far, that's worthy of criticism, especially if like you're trying to make this an allegory for anything else.
I would say though, then conversely, if the main protagonists that you're trying to portray as the good guys are, if they're like complacent with this sort of discrimination, maybe, but I don't think that's the case in either work.
I think. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of Ruby because I haven't watched the X-Men Brotherhood stuff. In Ruby, like there's a reason that so many like stories about racism, not allegories for racism, stories
Mhm.
about racism, are done in the way that they are. To quote the most the prominent, most important political thinker of our generation, a lot of white people can only view socio-political conflict through the myopic lens of their own self-actualization. Did you get my reference?
Yeah, but I think like most people can only really comprehend things through their own lens.
What I'm saying is like a lot of like stories about racism place racism as an evil thing that individuals do. Like instances of racism are this racist being racist, and that's the problem with racism. It ignores all the structural and institutional barriers and like institutional like inertia that has kept like racial inequalities perpetuating without the absolute like need for any sort of like individual acts of racism. And a lot of stories about racism, well, one, make it so that individual racists are the problem, and two, they'll very often focus on like a white person's realization of like their own racism, or coming in to be the white savior to help the black people or something like that. Like The Blind Side is like a big example of that. or like the story was about this white lady who was the savior to this big black kid, and so that's where a lot of people like it's feel good.
I thought his like whole arc was his own like determination.
He did, but Sandra Bullock was like the main character, and it was like viewed through her lens. Again, there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with that, but it does mean that like a lot of people will view these issues through a myopic lens, to quote Sacco from that Bo Burnham song. It's like so. It frames the issues to be very simple, and it's, for lack of a better word, it's virtue signaling. You can feel good because you're not the KKK member, but that's not how racism manifests itself in society now. Just because you're not in the KKK doesn't mean like you don't have some like work to do, or doesn't mean you're complicit in a system that is perpetuating racial inequality that you say that you're against. But a lot of media will paint it as a feel-good story, like since you're not a KKK member, that means you're not racist. That's like the feel-good, like liberal virtue signaling that we can see in a lot of media.
So, in terms of Ruby, I guess specifically, I think there is like a genuine criticism that they haven't really like fully explained exactly how these animal people are being discriminated against. They sort of do some hand wavy things towards things, and they do, like you did say, have like individual.
That's how they kind of do it. It's individuals being a little bit.
Well, I don't think it's for a lack of trying. I think they tried to like. I think they unironically tried to like portray like somebody being like discriminatory towards people like that by paying them the exact same wage as the same people. Yeah, but like then he also says that he pays like his human workers the exact same way.
I'm not reading intentional malice on the parts of the writers in here. But I'm saying if you don't know shit about race and racial conflict, but you want to write a story about racism, those are the lenses you're going to look at. You're just going to be individuals being super bigoted. It's going to look at, like, since you don't want to have a world with this like racial conflict, and three of your main characters are not part of that oppressed racial group, so if they don't do anything to fight the racism, then they're complicit in that system. So they kind of like try to like have their cake and eat it too, to talk about racism, but in a way that doesn't make their world look inherently broken or inherently racist. So yeah, like it's not malice, but it's worthy of criticism because this is how a lot of people in the United States view racism as a problem.
Well, I think that the incompetence part is definitely more. I think the incompetence part is definitely a valid critique. I'm just saying that the odd choice to like get really mad that you would say that like, oh well, they've got points, but they're engaging in terrorism, so they're bad. Is like
really mad.
Bad writing.
It is.
Well, that's like the central. That's the central like criticism that you've seen in these sorts of things.
The central criticism. It was like 15 minutes of a 2.5 hour long video.
Well, the central criticism, that part. I haven't even fucking remembered the other parts of it.
Yeah, it was a very small part of that video, and it was a valid part. Like when you're talking about a show with bad writing, like one of the ways, if they approach racism, if they did the racism bad, if they talked about racism in a poor way, that absolutely falls into the umbrella of bad writing.
I just think that the means in which he criticized that was more of a personal choice, and with this content creator in particular, there is
literally everything was a personal choice. Literally everything was a personal choice. His media.
There's a tendency for the specific content creator to get over-invested in certain things, and that leads to some pretty bad
over-invested. I mean, if you think he focuses too much, like that's our opinion.
Well, I think he had. I think he did a similar thing, like I said before, with the Dark Souls 2 video, directly like lying about what another reviewer had said about certain mechanics. But yeah,
that's getting a little far away, and no, I disagree with that. I think.
Well, I think that when you're doing, I think, like I said before in my opening statement, I think that you can have like nuanced political analysis on media. I just think that you have to be cognizant of your personal biases, especially with politics that gets into like the massive subjective realm. Because then you might do something that's like really painfully embarrassing.
All right,
you know what I mean?
The most painfully embarrassing thing you can do is to pretend that objective media analysis is a thing that is worth pursuing. That's
I
the most
didn't-
cringy thing you can do.
I
I'm not
didn't
saying that
say
you said
anything
that.
about objective media analysis.
I'm not saying that you said that, but I'm saying that like there is no objective media analysis that is like useful in any way, shape, or form for how we consume media. Like
I think
everyone
there's-
has their biases, and a lot of the reasons like people won't say their biases is because they should be obvious. If you have a brain in your skull, everything is subjective when you're talking about a piece of media. This is just my opinion, or whoever's talking, it's just my opinion. So, and I'm going to bring my biases into it, and that's fine. Like
I think that there can be objective like aspects to media in terms of like quality. I think that there's like a definite like I don't think that it's I don't think it's like a stretch to say like if a action scene is well shot that you can pick apart what is actually going on in the scene and follow it, and that is objectively better than a fight scene that you can't really follow whatever the fuck's going on unless it's for like to establish like chaos.
Even that,
within
no,
the
even
scene.
that's subjective. Like, yeah, even that's subjective.
I don't know about that. I would say that there's like
What if someone like
levels
just
of
thinks
quality.
Dude,
I'd
if
say
someone-
there's levels of quality.
Dude, if someone thinks that like the long shot from Old Boy is boring, I think I think they should be thrown in prison, but I can't say that they're wrong.
I don't know. Especially with like video games, I think that there's like objective statements of like
there are
this
objective
is a well optimized game for the system.
There
or
are
this is,
objective
yeah.
there are objective data you can use to inform your subjective opinion, and that's fine, but still at the end of the day it's subjective.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that like I said before, people have their own like personal like biases towards certain things, and
Right.
I think you have to be aware of that, or else you might say things that are just
Of course, that's
not
why
true.
That's why instead of looking up an aggregate review site, you should find a reviewer who you tend to agree with on their taste in games.
Yeah, definitely
Push
agree
out
with
and
that.
just follow that one reviewer. That's probably going to be a better thing than looking at like aggregate scores. So, I have a question. Spice things up a little bit. Do you think that video games, movies, and television shows, you think that they's woke now?
I would definitely say that there's like a tendency towards certain political ideologies, a little bit more so now. But let's just be real here. Like, if we can really point to like one really like definitively bad thing about the Trump presidency is that a lot of people just stopped being funny because of it. Holy shit.
You know what? I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Or at least anytime they try to talk about Trump, there's no parodying Trump.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I hate to do with the fiery hatred of 1,000 suns, but most of the comedy subjected against him just wasn't funny.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely very try hard, I would say.
Cool. I want to call that. Look, what I'm talking about is like when they have too many of the WOMs or the blacks or the gays or the transes in the medias. Do you think that makes something woke?
It depends on how I guess they market it. Like if they're saying like this is specifically this, like oh we have an all-female writing staff. It's like oh okay that's cool. Good for you. I don't remember asking.
Yeah, but we didn't ask for an all-male writing staff either. But sometimes we get it.
Yeah, sometimes we get it, but like I don't think people advertise that.
Well, no, because it's the status quo. As we're talking about the status quo, like a lot of people who have status like default identities don't have a salient awareness of that identity unless it's.
I don't know about that though.
I actually have research to say that.
I would say the status quo at this point is to like announce like very loudly that you have like this quotient.
I do have research to say that like especially in regards to like race, that white is not a very salient identity because it's soon to be default. You know what? Hey,
Okay.
you're an anime fan. Do you think it's weird when white people say that, hey, you can't play that character? That character is not black, but they're white and they're trying to play the character. Do you think that's weird?
No, I don't give a shit at all. Like
I'm not saying if you give a shit. Do you think it's
like,
weird? Do you think it's weird to when people criticize a black person for cosplaying an anime character? Like that character isn't black. Okay, they're not white either.
Wait, do people do that?
Yeah.
A
lot of people.
I have seen like people get like really mad if the character is like particularly tan and they cosplay that. But I've never seen like people complain about like the I'm remember like somebody did like a really good like a couple of black people did really good Persona cosplay.
I'm
No,
not
I
saying
don't-
it's not a huge thing, but a lot of people like the point I'm trying to make is that like since
Mhm.
white is assumed to be the default so hard,
Mhm.
a lot of white anime fans will watch anime and read the
Mhm.
characters as white, when 99% of the time they are not white, they're Japanese.
Yeah, no, I don't think I don't think that happens a lot though.
It
Like,
happens more than you think.
I would say that like the more common thing that you'll see is like people that like take like an anime character and then like distinctly like draw them to be black and then said fix that for you or something like that, or draw them with, like,
that's
different
All
proportions.
right, I know people do that, but that's way
Yeah.
less common than like people assuming that anime characters are white.
I don't
way
think
less
so.
common. I think so.
I don't
It's
think
way
so.
less common.
I think I've seen way more like fix that for you statements than like you can't cosplay as Rin.
Okay,
you're
okay. Well,
black.
then there's way more fix that for you statements of like making
Yeah.
anime characters hotter, making their boobies bigger. There's way more of those than there are like making a character
I don't-
black.
But did they say fix that for you? Because like
Yes.
usually that sort of thing is more towards like, oh, we made Sailor Moon, but she's also like 250 pounds or something like that.
No, it happens way more in the opposite direction. If you have a character that isn't like conventionally a 10 out of
Uh-huh.
10, a lot of people will fix it for you like that. Who's the Aloy? Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn. A lot of people fixed that character design to make her look just stupid. Like she looked like the fixed version looked like a model in full makeup instead of someone who lived in a post-apocalyptic world with like machine dinosaurs.
Hmm.
Like, so that kind of shit's what I see a lot.
Oh,
Well,
I
the
get really hung up on like the post-apocalyptic sort of settings that have like characters that have like perfectly conditioned and shampooed hair and stuff like that. So
Oh yeah, that's a big
yeah.
criticism. Who do you think it affects more? Dudes generally can still look hot if they're a little dirty, a little messed up. I don't know. I kind of like.
I mean,
that,
I'm
so-
not gonna lie,
but a lot
dude,
of-
I fucking love women that have like a little bit of engine grease on them. To be honest,
Which
I
is-
think that's really
well,
cute.
Well, also that's very progressive of you.
Yeah.
But a lot of people think that want their ladies in the post-apocalypse to have full makeup, perfect teeth, flawless skin. Like I know
Shaved
fixed
underarms.
characters, Like make it. What now?
Shaved underarms. How
Shaved
often do you
underarm?
see
Oh
that?
yeah, the shaved under. God, so many people think that women don't have underarm hair. That's fucking weird to me.
Well,
I've
so
heard people say that it's goes against biology for women to have underarm hair. I've heard people say that to me out loud. with their-
I
with their
haven't
voice.
heard that, but what I have seen is that there's this really strange thing with sleeveless. I'm sorry for interjecting in this. I just
No,
think
you're
it's
fine.
interesting.
Please do.
There's this weird thing like with the sleeveless woman in these like zombie films and zombie TV shows, and like they have like perfectly hairless arms and perfectly hairless underarms too, and then perfectly hairless like legs, and it's like the weirdest thing
And
to
their
me.
hair has been shampooed and conditioned, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They might have like a little bit of dirt on their face for like makeup and shit. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
like,
but the
yeah.
one male
Now, some of that is,
character,
like,
weird.
the male
some of
main
that is also,
character
like-
is like all rugged and all that. so.
No, all the male characters always have 5 o'clock shadow. No more, no less.
They kind of. I stopped watching Walking Dead a long time ago, but I think they made the main guy, like he had like a pretty long beard at some
Oh
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way worse for women characters in media. Like there's a beauty standard that they have to uphold that the dudes generally don't.
Maybe there's like some characters I can definitely point to, but like I don't consume a whole lot of media as much anymore anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I would say like to go back to it, like I do think that there is a lot of like announced increased woke like casting or whatever, but like generally it's the ones that like specifically announce it. But that's just media in general. Well, at least Western media in general.
Yeah, well, why
I
is
don't
that a
think.
bad thing?
I think that like when you're doing it specifically to like hit check marks, that's a little weird. And generally,
So what I don't like about that analysis is that you think that like if you are including certain identities, that's hitting check marks, but other identities are assumed to be defaults.
Do you think that it's not on like some sort of quota system though?
Quota?
Yeah.
Quota? No.
Yeah, like when they're doing like focus testing and stuff like that. You know,
focus testing? Focus testing, maybe.
Because all these casting decisions are generally done through like focus groups, probably with like, we need like this, we need this.
I'll push back on all. I'll push back on all, but I'm not going to deny that focus testing is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, doesn't that like reflect back on society? Like, there's a really good bit in Aziz Ansari's. I forget it was the first or second season, but they were pitching a show, and it was him, his Indian friend, and a black woman. And like just that happened to be his friend group. Like say, hey, these are some actors I'm friends with. I think we'd have a good sitcom together. And the media was like talking to him like, well, I don't think audiences like they need a white person to identify with. If it's all people of color, then it's going to be a show for people of color. So like you got to have some white people in there. And I thought that was a really interesting bit because like a lot of people will assume that if there are no white people in the main cast of a show, that it's not for white people. Whereas a show for all white people can be enjoyed by everybody. Shows with a female protagonist.
I think they specifically want characters though, so that the other racial and ethnic groups can identify with that character too.
I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
I think that's been like a pretty common call.
That's why representation and diversity in media is important, but also like black people have been the default. They have all the characters they could ever possibly want. Straight people in particular have all the characters and romance options they could ever possibly want. And when you're used to having every single big budget mainstream piece of media targeted specifically towards you to people to identify with you, like there's a difference between like I like a lot of straight characters, identify with their romances, but I'd like to see some like gay characters in there too. First is like the opposite of that was like you've had the entire cornucopia of every different character that goes with your identity that you want, and now that just every character isn't geared towards your interests and your what you want to see in a character, now that suddenly something's been taken away from you, I have an issue with that. You can identify with any character that you want to, but it's
not
said
anything about taking away from though.
I didn't say you did.
Right.
But I am saying that like there's a lot of people out there who like who will think if you include a gay romance option in the video game, you're taking away from the straight people.
I don't know about that because like I don't remember this being like a super big issue back in the days because I think you had like gay romance options in like the first Mass Effect, right? Could be wrong.
Sort of.
Because I think you can fuck Kaden or something.
No, not in the first one. You sort of had a sort of same-sex romance options with the Asari, who are like this all-female group of hot blue alien chicks, and you could romance her if you are the Lady Shepherd. And that was super controversial. That's the thing. Like, there's always controversy. Anytime.
Well, I think it was more the controversial. I think the more controversial aspect was the sex scenes in general. But I mean, it's not like
sex scenes in general were a big one.
Super
but
how
about this
one? Graphic. Yeah.
Let's look at The Last of Us 2. How did gamers love The Last of Us 2?
I think a lot of people didn't like The Last of Us 2 for what was it?
Did anybody call The Last of Us 2 woke? Did a lot of people call The Last of Us 2 woke? There's a correct answer here.
I think some people did, yeah.
A lot of people. Now, why do they call it woke?
I think it's
woke ideology was
specifically for Abby killing Joel.
Hold on.
I think it was like the main complaint that I saw from that.
Hold on, not
fair.
Now, you can, from a story perspective, you could not like that. Why do they call it woke? That was an incorrect answer. Abby killing Joel wasn't woke. All right, there are two other reasons people called it woke. Come on.
I don't think it was Lev because Lev wasn't really part of the main.
Three other reasons.
The main merchandise or the main
advertising. Okay, now
advertising.
What were the other two? Come on, man, just answer it for me. You know the answer. You don't have to agree with it.
Being like extremely buff.
Yeah,
which
Abby was
a little weird.
Nope, it is not weird at all. All right, it's just now. Hey, to read into the text, she loves weightlifting.
You need specifically targeted nutrition for that too, though.
Yeah, and she had it. Plenty of meat. Trust me. No, trust me. Trust me. I know.
They made, like,
Dude, I have
they
2
made
degrees in
specific
exercise
references-
physiology. Her build is
They
realistic,
made,
especially with
specific,
her.
they made specific references to like how hard it was to come by food at some points, though.
Yeah, but still, they had plenty of food. There are people in there there are dudes who are muscular. Do you think it takes like fewer calories for a dude to get muscular?
No, I think the bodybuilder
A
and
little bit.
post-apocalypse thing is silly regardless.
She's not a bodybuilder. She's built. All right.
She's
and,
got a
and it's
bodybuilder
established.
physique,
And it's
though.
established that she's like her primary hobby is like lifting weights, and she's
Yeah.
very strong, but she's not unreasonably strong. I think one of the things she push presses 185 pounds. That's a
Yeah.
lot of weight for a lady. It's not unheard of. If you have a good high school athlete, they'll hit that.
Yeah.
And what was the other reason? So we
I don't
have
know
a
what the
woman
other
who is
reason
realistically buff for her scenario. And what was the other reason?
I don't remember what the. Is it supposed to be Ellie
Ellie.
being lesbian?
Yeah, Ellie being
That
a
was like
canonical
known though at the
lesbian.
beginning, though. That
It was
like,
known at the
at-
beginning, but it was known at the beginning, but specifically as one of the very, very few big budget AAA games where you have to be a non-straight character. You don't have the option to romance whoever you want in this game. You have to be Ellie, who is a lesbian. That is a huge step forward in representation for video games. I think it's
Yeah, but I don't
awesome.
remember people
But a lot of
really
people got
complaining
mad
about
at it.
Ellie like
Did I
when
do?
the
I
DLC
do,
happened.
though. Yeah, well, one, because it was DLC, it wasn't part of the main game. But now
Mhm.
it's part of the main game, and now you have to play it if you want to play the game. A DLC, that's optional. That is, like, by definition, it's optional for you to play the main game. But now it's front and center. You don't have the option to romance someone else. You don't have any options in terms of like what your character does in the story, which could be a good or bad thing, depending on like what you're looking for. But the notion that you had to play a lesbian, that turned a lot of people off. And the reason it turned a lot of people off is because
I don't remember that specifically, but I could
well,
be wrong.
you cannot remember it, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It
It
absolutely.
just seems like
happened.
a weird thing to complain about when this was already known like
I think it's a
9
weird
years ago.
Yeah, I think it's a weird thing to complain about too, but people still did it. So hold on, Last
Mhm.
of Us 2 woke. We can see a quartering video. Let's see. All right, let's
Specifically about Ellie's sexuality. 'Cause again,
well,
like,
what
this
else
is-
could it be? What else could it be?
No, because I'm saying that specifically because like a lot of people complain about Abby specifically, but I don't remember.
Yeah, but
complaining
people complaining about
Ellie.
Abby were just as big of idiots as people complained about Ellie. All right, this is not an unrealistic body type for these circumstances in there. It's not an unrealistic body type today. Plenty of ladies like lift weights. Plenty of women are athletes, and plenty of them just won the genetic lottery and they put on muscle easy. I trained women who put on muscle really easy, and it kind of pissed me off because they put on muscle it almost like easier than I did. Like sometimes it just happens.
Again, I don't see that as being because I think a lot of I saw like a lot more coverage of people complaining about the story because I think the story is like really like bad and
No, this goes into like subjective.
I specifically remember like there's,
Why
like,
are you
some
okay? We're not talking about like
weird- there's
we're not
some
talking about our
weird
subjective
shit
opinions.
in there's some weird
we're not
shit
talking
in,
about
like,
our subjective
okay.
opinions of the plot of this game. We're talking about like the political ideology that people read into it. Like, if you think this was a woke game, in my opinion, there's a 99% possibility you think that any non-straight or non-traditionally gender-conforming character is woke, and that's a problem. You have deluded yourself into thinking that your adherence to the status quo is somehow apolitical when it isn't.
No, I just think that like the outspoken intent by the people who are making it to be like we're doing it because of this.
Outspoken
it
intent.
seems-
Can you show me the
or
the
at least
outspoken
very
intent?
thinly veiled
Oh,
stuff.
okay, so not outspoken but thinly veiled. I think the thin. Okay, I think the not so thinly
no, I
veiled
think that- I
criticism
think
for
that
it being
there's,
woke
like-
is
I think
because
that
people like
there's
don't like
very
seeing a muscular
clearly-
lady.
No, I kind of like muscle
Mm.
ladies. I'm just
That's-
saying
yeah,
that
that's
I think
fine,
there's
but a lot
like
of people
an aspect
thought it
because
was
like I don't think people are really complaining that much about Dimitrescu in Resident Evil 8. That
Wait!
seems like
Hold on, do you think that's comparable? Do you think a human
Yeah.
woman? Do you think a human woman? I didn't like analyzing her body type and analyzing a fictional vampire lady. Do you think those are comparable? In two,
yeah, I
in-
definitely
do
say
you
that.
think,
If people are like complaining that the character is like over muscular, yeah,
dude,
absolutely.
one was Dimitrescu muscular or was
Yeah.
she huge?
Yes, both.
No, she
Both.
was huge.
Both.
She wasn't
yeah.
muscular
She's like 9 feet
I'm
tall
so-
and has like
yeah,
arms
do you
the
think-
size of a python.
because she proportionally to a 9-foot tall woman.
Nah, she.
I'm
was
sorry,
pretty
no,
tall.
dude, no, we can't, I can't.
She was pretty dull.
I can't. Like, that
That's
is
my
not the
remembering
same
of it.
thing. That's not the same thing.
I would say it's kind of the same thing. I think
It's
a lot
not
of
the same
people's
thing. It's- if you-
antagonism towards Ellie is the fact that people already knew at the beginning that Ellie kills Joel.
But
or not
again, the
Joel,
big thing...
Abby.
No, wrong.
Abby.
By the way, spoilers for Last of Us 2. It's been like 2 years. It's your fault at this point.
Yeah.
But no, yes, she kills Joel. And in context in the story, fucking good. I love Joel. Joel is my favorite character. I look like him. He's one of my favorite characters in media. Fucking good. Get his ass. Kill his ass. He deserved it.
I don't think
No,
he did,
fucking
though.
get him.
I don't think he did, though.
Well, that's again.
The
That's
way that they portray in the second one is
All
a
right.
lot different than the way that they portrayed it in the first one. The
Well,
the
no.
second one, no, they actually retconned it. They actually
They didn't
made it seem
retcon-
as,
wait.
No, they did.
What?
They absolutely did.
they retcon.
They made it seem as if the procedure that they were going to do on Ellie would 100% result in a cure. The text logs that you see at in the first game, they've had people like Ellie before, and it
Yeah,
didn't work
wait.
before.
Well,
Like,
hold on.
Joel,
Well, I
Joel
gotta-
has
wait.
absolutely no
This
reason
has
to have
nothing.
an
Hold on. This has
expectation
nothing to
that
do with
it's
what we're
going
talking
to
about.
lead to,
Hold on. This has nothing to do with what we're talking
Uh-huh.
about. Like, no. Joel, from Abby's perspective and from like the audience perspective, like, yeah, like he kind of had it coming. He massacred an entire group of people to save one girl. That's what was great. I liked about the story. You saw why he did it. You could empathize with him. You see why people wanted him dead. You empathize with them. I thought that was great. It has nothing to do with like political woke media. Like, why are you trying to like pivot off of that? The reason people clearly stated because it's clearly stated because it's the correct answer. The people thought. The reason people thought that The Last of Us was woke is because it had a lesbian main character who you had to play as a lesbian. They showed explicit romantic scenes in it, and you played as a muscular woman. That's it. That's why people saw it woke. And to a lesser extent, there was a trans character. There was a trans side character. Oh, yeah, but there's
the trans side character wasn't part of any of the promotional things.
I know, but people played
had
it.
No clue
Yeah,
about Lev
but then
whatsoever.
people played it and then they talked about it. Okay, so then that happened. Linear time exists.
Did
The
people,
fact that it was a
actively
muscular
complain
lady
about
killing
Lev?
Joel, anybody who has half a brain in their skull knows why Joel would have been killed at the start of the game. Anybody with half a brain would know like why that needed to be the case. In fact, why it was really the only thing that
because
could
it's
make
an
sense in that
allegory
story.
for revenge and why it's bad.
Yeah, that was the whole point of the story.
Right, except the thing is that Joel
killed-
is acting in more justifiable terms and
massacring
they
an entire group of people, including defenseless
massacring
doctors.
an entire group of people
who
that
are trying to
willing
find a
engage
sword.
in medical experimentation that they don't even know will work at the cost of human lives.
Yeah, because what's the alternative? Are people doing fine? Okay, no, this is fine.
Yeah,
We'll fight about Last of Us 2 if you let us, Stardust. Come on.
Yeah, there's like an
I'm
entire
sorry?
settlement that's doing absolutely fine.
No, we're going to fight about The Last of Us 2's story specifically if you let us.
Yeah.
This is where you, if you wanted to go there, I'll go there, but this is pretty far removed.
I'm just saying that like I think that the problems are mainly, or at least from what I can tell, is the retconning of the story.
From what I understand, like it was never a 100%.
Do you guys want to
thing, but it
move
was-
over to the spicy
let's-
topic?
Yeah,
We can
Give me-
we can schedule like a more detailed
No,
nerd
God, no.
debate if you want.
I can't do it. I
Okay.
can't do a second reschedule. All right, can you give me 2 seconds to pee and I'll be right back? Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't think anyone was complaining about Lev though. Although Lev's story is like kind of handled really fucking weird, but that's neither here nor there.
I don't know much about these video game topics, so I just kind of let the let you guys kind of go with where you want to go with it, I guess. So.
Yeah. How are you doing, Stardust? You having a good day today?
I am, yeah. I'm geared up. I'm just checking my topics for the thing after this, and yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch your VOD from yesterday. You're apparently you were painfully unfunny, but I think you're probably like painfully funny in that context.
It's very awkward. I lean full into the cringe humor when I confront Demon Mama. I think it's pretty good. I won over a lot of her audience, and I definitely won her over. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting that. So. Yeah, other than that, and then I got into it on the Prime panel after that. with
Oh.
a few people. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that out later.
Yeah, I just made everybody an enemy basically last night.
Hey, you gotta make enemies at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'll make enemies right now. I think Last of Us 2. Great game. 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I'm gonna be real. I have no idea what you guys start talking about when you talk about politics.
Yeah.
Not politics. When you talk about video games. So. Yeah.
Are we talking specifically just story?
Story 9 out of 10. Gameplay 8.5 out of 10.
Oh.
Graphics 9.5 out of 10. I liked it a lot.
I would say the story is probably like maybe like a 7.5.
Okay.
I think Joel dying needed to happen. That's how that story needed to progress. Anyway.
For the spicy topic, I believe the spicy topic was the anonymity online topic, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys want to dive into that?
Yeah, sure.
You want to recap our disagreement last time?
I don't even remember what our disagreement was, so yeah, go ahead.
So I made the accusation, I'll lump to it. I think that for certain people, the reason they don't show their face is because they are ashamed of their political opinions, or not ashamed of them, but they think their political opinions will come back to bite them. And this this is certainly a true statement. It also means that they're going to obfuscate what their true political opinions are. When you say that like certain political opinions get banned off of YouTube, banned off of Twitch, that's fine. Say what those certain political opinions are out loud with your mouth.
Mm-hmm. Is that it?
Behind, yeah, that's kind of it. I do think like showing your face is part of that. It's part of that obfuscation.
So I think that in general there is, I guess like anonymity can be a very important thing, just especially given like how hyper polarized things have gotten as of late, I would say. If I were to like start streaming like 3 years ago, I'd probably do face cam, but nowadays, like I don't know, dude. I have outside of the current paradigm political opinions, and I don't want like fucking people trying to dox me and trying to get me fired for things that I haven't even said. I think that especially now with like people taking their like personal beliefs like way too fucking seriously, I think anonymity is like a completely reasonable thing for people to want to maintain.
There's a certain time and place on the internet where anonymity is a good thing. I'm never going to deny that. But if you are representing your own ideas, if you're on a public platform to discuss ideas, I think you should stand by them. I think you should use at least your real face, and I think you should go at the very least by at least your first name, if not your full name.
Why is that specifically?
Because why that is specifically is because you can hide behind a lot of things. If you're not willing to associate your name with your beliefs, I think you're just a little bit of a coward.
What if you
if you start talking about like...
Sorry. What if you have a first name that is like so unique that if people knew your first name, they would be able to like immediately know that you were the only person in your country with that name, and they'd be able to dox you immediately.
If that was the case, well, that's a very, very unique case. But for the vast majority of people, yeah,
that's my case. So yeah.
So it's on a case by case basis, but generally. There's a reasonable fear of like getting doxxed. I do think that it is the case, but also like own your opinions. So don't hide behind like you say you have certain opinions outside of the current political like what'd you call it, the no you didn't call it the
paradigm.
Paradigm, there you go. So you have certain opinions outside of that, but what are they? America, like we're tolerating, especially in 2021, some pretty far right opinions.
I don't think we are though.
Oh yeah, absolutely are. Yeah,
really?
Yeah,
really?
Dude, Donald Trump was president for 4 years behind that. And now we have like we had an entire riot, and then a subsequent like fallout from that riot about people who thought the election was stolen. Like it is okay to like Wait,
are you saying that people who were at the protest there haven't like had people try extensively to dox them and try to get them fired from employers?
Oh, well, that's different, isn't it? If you engage
that's the exact reason why you might maintain anonymity, dude.
Hold on. appearing on a Twitch panel and like engaging in a riot against the Capitol building are two different things. Do not pretend for 1 second. Dox every one of those motherfuckers. They committed a crime. They committed a crime. Oh my God! Look at this. Okay, look at this weasel. All crimes are bad. What? You think like appearing on a Twitch political panel and like raging and like storming the Capitol? Those are different things. What? All right, come on, weasel. Let's go.
What am I weaseling on?
Like the fact that like, oh, you think all crimes are bad? You think storming the Capitol building is bad?
Okay,
I mean,
so like, would you say that
doxing a rioter is the same thing as
people that trespass at the Capitol for the Kavanaugh hearings should also be doxed and like fired from their jobs?
I think that they were like a lot of them were convicted of crimes because they were there.
Right.
Yeah, if you commit.
No, I'm not saying about convicted of crimes. I'm talking about doxed and fired from their employers.
What do you think? What do you think?
Okay.
Should all the January 6 riders?
Bad.
So what? I think it's contextual. Dox all the January 6 riders. Don't dox random people on Twitch. Do you think it was fine? Do you think the January 6 people rioting and causing all that destruction, trying to subvert?
I mean, if they like engaged in assault against people, yeah, I think they should probably be arrested.
Do you think storming the Capitol?
If they were just inside the Capitol, like,
that they weren't supposed to be in there?
No, I don't think they were supposed to be in there.
Cool. So they were trespassing in an attempt to like subvert our democratic process, right? They weren't sightseeing.
I don't necessarily know how many of them were in there for the express intention to like subvert the electoral process. Well,
if you didn't know that, that's exactly what they were there for. There's no difference of opinion.
Like as a coordinated effort.
It's not a very, very loosely coordinated effort in the sense that like they were there for the same reason.
Where
when I say very, very loosely coordinated effort, they didn't just show up out of nowhere. They were called there by a bunch of different disparate political outfits. Like when I say
for the express intention of going in there to subvert the democratic process.
They wanted. Yep, because that's what was happening. That's one of the.
Holy shit! Where did you find out about this? You should get that to the FBI.
Why were they there? Why were they there?
Huh?
Why were they there? Give me an affirmative answer.
They were there to protest. It sounds
protest
like.
What? Protest what?
The results of the election.
Really? Why do they think? Why would they protest that? It was a free and fair election.
They believe that it was not a free and fair election.
Cool. And what would you do if you thought that the election was stolen from you? What would you do? What would be a reasonable action for you to take?
Probably bitch about Russia for 3 years.
See, look at the weasel. Look at the weasel, just a weasel.
How's that a weasel?
Out of that. Yeah, they'd probably bitch about Russia for 3 years. Do you think that was any way comparable to like? No. I'm not letting you subvert that. Why were they there, motherfucker? Why were they there? They were there because they thought the election was stolen based on
invalid.
Yeah, they thought they were invalid because they were lied to, or they're idiots, or both, and they were trying to subvert the election to the person that they thought won, despite the fact that there was no evidence. There hasn't been any evidence. They wanted to subvert the election results, and that's what they did. And look how you tried to weasel out of that by saying, "Oh, Hillary." You did like probably complain about Russia for 3 years.
No, I'm just talking about like,
that was a clear reference to like all people
cast out into the 2016 election.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was called a pivot away, and you did it because you didn't want to answer the actual question.
No, it's bringing up an analogy.
Yeah, it is. Not is. It's what you were doing.
I'm pivoting.
You absolutely
pivoting at all.
When I asked you a question about the January 6th riot, and you pivot to say like, oh, well, what about Russia for 3 years? You don't think that's a pivot?
No, I'm saying you would probably consider a more reasonable action.
Yeah, you can whine about Russia, but that was not the same thing. Obviously Russia didn't get in and subvert our democracy. They influenced it.
Reported by major media outlets.
Yeah, exactly. By influencing like Facebook ads and stuff like that. That was an influence. But this was a far cry away from like influencing voting machines, like finding mysterious recounts. Not letting our independent fact checkers look at the polling places. Those are far and away different things, and you know they are. That's why you try to.
Yeah, they are different things, but I would also.
They are different things, and one of them is they're analogous in the sense that they're both people who didn't like an election.
Means in which to throw doubt into the election.
Yeah. So okay. So I just think you're a weasel. I think you're an absolute fucking coward, and that's why you don't show your face.
So no, the reason I don't show my face is because there is a.
Let's give Flamenco a chance to answer at least.
Yeah. So the reason I don't show my face in particular is because like people, if you have even like marginally right-wing beliefs, they will try to obsessively try to dox you and try to ruin your try to ruin your ability to support yourself. I think like a very specific example of people who like just absolutely probably did like very normy things are the people who got fired for supporting Kyle Rittenhouse's legal fund. There are people who absolutely went to employers so that they supported Kyle Rittenhouse and then tried to get them fired for that. And some did actually get them fired. I think that there is probably not an analogous example like that in terms of like more left-leaning causes. I could be wrong though.
Okay, do you think that trans people have a good time online?
No. Are there people that are out there trying to get them fired from their employers?
Yep.
Really?
If they found out that they're any form of like trans activist, which is basically just if you're a trans person and you say that transphobia is bad, yeah, absolutely. They'll try to get their name. They'll try to find their dead name to do it that way. They'll tell them to kill themselves, and they'll try to go after their livelihood if that's any and all possible. Right? This is
a specific example of that.
A specific example of a trans woman trying to get fired. Let's say no, it's fine.
Yeah, trying to get them specifically fired for that. Yeah. And not for anything else that they have said. I'm not talking about if they're like actually like making violent threats or anything, because there are some people.
Oh, here's a big one. Oh, here's a big one. This wasn't what it.
Do some.
This is a big one. This wasn't exactly what I was talking about, but Anita Sarkeesian was like doxxed like a fuck ton during game. Like she's doxxed a fuck ton.
Okay, she was doxxed.
Yeah,
doxxed. Did they get her fired?
Like her position was like one. I think getting fired and like having your home address leaked, I think those are comparable.
Because I think after that
I think those
scandal,
are comparable,
she got like,
right?
I think after that scandal, she got paid like $20,000 speaking.
Yeah, and like half the people who have been canceled online use that to like subvert, like bolster their own careers. Like, no, I'm not like if you were work at fucking like Foot Locker or something. Yeah, I don't think like getting fired from your job is a good thing. But don't sit here and pretend that like this is a big problem that showing your face online is going to like have you subjected to. Lots of right-wing people, lots of conservative people go on debate shows all the time and they show their face.
Okay.
Connor Points does. Rob Noor does. I hate Rob Noor. Big Papa fucking goddamn fascist shows his face online. Like, so what's your excuse?
My excuse is I don't want my personal life to get fucking dragged into internet shit.
How would they do it? What would they say about you?
Through doxing, through I guess could bring up that I'm a fucking weird anime fan. I think that like people
out of it. Oh yeah, it's your anime fan. It's
yeah, absolutely.
They're gonna get you fired because you're an anime fan. I'm sure that's exactly what's gonna happen.
Oh well,
really?
Okay.
Like, why won't you say what you're like? What are those political opinions of yours? They're outside the paradigm of norms.
I think that you should probably be allowed to say what you think, and I think that.
Oh yeah, so far outside the paradigm.
Okay.
Free speech. Free speech, that's so far outside the paradigm of current American discourse. You're so brave. Someone even say stunning.
Okay.
What are the opinions? Come on. What are them opinions that are outside of like the paradigm, the mainstream paradigm? Come on.
I guess that like maybe immigration should basically favor American citizens in terms of the implementation of its policy.
Immigration should help American citizens more than like the
non-citizens. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. And so that you're zero, buddy. You're zero opinions that are outside of the mainstream American paradigm.
Really? Because I've heard that like that opinion specifically is racist. That our immigration policy should specifically target.
If I hear it on Fox News
people.
every day, I'm sorry, it's not, dude.
Wait,
racist,
people, like, actively
dude,
try
racist
to, like,
and outside the American paradigm are not
News?
like this. Like, you can be racist and well within the American paradigm. All right.
Wait,
if I can hear it on Fox News
Fox
at like
News
3
is
o'clock.
Racist?
Yeah, oh fuck
so
yeah.
Calls of racism aren't things that get people fired?
It can be, but sometimes it's
Okay,
not.
so you understand.
Hold on, it can. No, wait. Do you think that if
like
anyone is called racist, they're automatically going to be fired? Is that what you're saying?
It depends on how.
it can
like,
actually.
I'm not letting you
So
walk
to
away
be
from
fair,
people are actually
to-
about it.
Hold on, I'm not.
So to be fair, the title of being a racist can have pretty intense implications. However, I think that this actually gets a little. This topic itself is a little bit more personal. I do believe last week when we were talking, Jangles seemed to think that Flamenco had some very controversial views, right?
Yep, and this is why I call him a weasel right now. I'm asking him what they were, and he gave the two of the most like basic bitch conservative answers that you could possibly give. That is the
Ones
mainstream
that you
view. That is the
you
mainstream.
Already by your own wording would say can be labeled as racist, and you already acknowledge that it can be used as a means in which to personally attack a person and ruin their livelihoods.
So quick question.
Exactly.
No.
We're not talking about honest people.
Weasel.
We're talking about deranged, mentally ill people that have nothing better to do
I
than
asked
to
you.
pile
I know.
nonsense about
I
people
asked
they
you what your
don't like
views
on
were
the internet,
outside of
dude.
the. I asked you what your views were outside the mainstream paradigm, and your two things were like, I think people people should be able to say what they want, and I think that immigration
And by
policy
your
should
own
benefit
wording,
citicism. By my own wording, bullshit.
And by your own wording, you could already say that those things can be labeled as racist.
I'm
and you
saying
already
those are
understand that those
dude.
have
I'm saying those are
adverse
so much
societal
nothing statements that they don't mean
consequences.
anything. Those are nothing statements. You can use that in a racist way. You can use it in a non-racist way. You can use it in an incredibly racist way. You can use it in an incredibly anti-racist way. They're nothing statements.
You understand.
So I'm asking you for detail. What are your views?
You understand the societal backlash, and you also acknowledge that these are means in which they can actually be done. So I don't think you actually have any contention with what I'm actually saying.
Because I think you're weaseling out of what you actually mean.
No,
So-
I
Do you
believe
think the two
exactly
things
what
you
I'm
said
saying.
say no?
So
Answer
Flo-
this yes or no, and there's a correct answer. Do you think that the two things that you said are outside the mainstream paradigm, the mainstream Overton window of political views?
You
in
just
America?
called them racist, dude.
Did I? Play it
Yes.
back. Play it back.
Yeah, you just said that those
Play it
things
back.
could be labeled as things that are you would
Oh, that's two
Okay,
different things.
wait. Let
I'm
me
saying that there's
interject
some-
here. Let me interject
Right, but
here.
you
Okay.
understand-
So I think what Jangles is looking for here is like.
Flam wins just by the fact this dude is acting unhinged.
Sorry, I just got distracted by chat.
okay.
So I think what Jangles is looking for here is some of your more controversial views, flamenco. And I don't know, Jangles, if you have previous history in which you know that flamenco has some specific views that you think are very controversial. If you do know, maybe you can voice them and ask him, hey, do you believe this? Or something like that.
So that's the thing. He said that he has views outside of the mainstream paradigm, and he's not demonstrated that.
No, I've already
But I do
demonstrated
know-
that.
No,
you
you
follow
haven't.
the logical chain that you said that was
I
part
followed
of
the
Fox
logical-
News,
I
and you
followed
said
the
that Fox
logical
News
chain.
is racist, so
I
therefore
think Fox News
you
on the
believe
whole,
that
yeah, is a
my
little bit
you
racist.
believe my
But I'm also
you
not
believe
gonna say that,
my
like, as a
political
whole.
positions can be labeled as racist through the
They're
means
nothing.
of
The things that
common
you just said,
understanding right now.
the things that you just said are
Uh-huh.
nothing. Like what you specifically said, I think people should be able to say what they want. That's nothing. All right, you can use that in an anti-racist or pro-racist way. It's a nothing statement, and I think that like immigration policy should benefit citizens rather than non-citizens. Almost everyone agrees with that. Like
Really?
that is
I don't
again,
necessarily know
yeah,
if that's
really,
true.
really. That's
Because
what
I've
you
heard that any explanation
really,
that has been
really,
labeled as
no.
racist.
Oh, I don't know. Oh,
You okay, buddy?
I don't know. No, like come on.
Uh-huh.
Give me some beefy stuff, because here's what I know you did. The last time we interacted, this is where I remember you from. I tried to get you so many times to like ask, hey, why do I asked you, is being a Nazi bad? You wouldn't answer. I tried to ask, why do so many white nationalists really love the Ralph retort and the kill stream? You didn't answer. You said it was guilt by association. As like they were going to you for fucking cheesecake recipes, and not because you were espousing political ideology that would be amenable to white nationalists.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess it depends on what you mean by Nazi. I believe that that term, I think even the people who like espouse it and say it like every single time as a means in which to discredit the person that they don't like, will say that they kind of like say it willy-nilly without any real sort of nuance.
And hey, I'll criticize that too. So the fucking idiots on the left who call everyone a Nazi, it makes it harder.
what's your definition of that?
My definition of a Nazi is someone who endorses an old school patriarchal white hegemony that like tries to revert back to previously described social norms from a mythologized past. I just off the top of my head, that's how I would describe a Nazi. And usually it has to do with like and also the Jews are involved.
Okay,
That's a
so
big
it's just
component of it.
conservatism, but also Jews are involved.
I mean, if you want to describe conservatism that way, yeah.
Well, I think you said like a specific return to like societal norms. So
From
like, that
from a mythologized
is-
past, like think from
Okay.
a mythologized past. You can't okay, I'm not saying that like everybody who thinks that like the things were better when like there was a one man, one woman in a household. I think if you believe that that is like the only way for society to go forward in 2021, that puts you pretty sus. But like someone
Okay.
like, so for example, you think Vincent James. Vincent James is who I debated on the kill stream. I think you were there, or if not, you were very aware of it. You think he's an
I think it was in the call section. Could be
Okay,
wrong
so-
though. I don't think I was co-hosting that.
Okay,
night.
so yeah, so do you think Vincent James is a Nazi? He is someone I would definitively put in the Nazi camp.
Is he like saying that all these things are like specifically because of Jewish interests?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
you have him specifically saying that?
Yep.
What did he say
I-
specifically?
So I have to look it up because his YouTube channel was
Yeah.
fucking yeeted. But I have an old doc that I can give you
He's
later.
very gleeful about that. I think he used that YouTube channel to support his family.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's taken away.
Oof,
No, fuck
okay.
that. No, fuck that. Spouting like Nazi rhetoric. I don't. Do you think like if you're spouting Nazi rhetoric but you're doing it to support your family, it makes it okay?
I don't know if he was specifically saying that. Was he calling for like specific actions against other people?
No, he was trying to maintain TOS like a weasel, and he would say that like, and then when he would say like, so the person pushing for this like gay rights bill is like a Goldenberg, Goldenberg. He would kind of do that. Like I've been.
Is that what he specifically did, or is it?
Yeah,
Like
he did that. He did that a lot. It was very, very obvious. That's why he violated TOS. But he thought like gay marriage should be like illegalized. He thought like trans people were like degenerates. He thought specifically in the debate that I had.
Was he calling for them? Was he calling?
He thought
for violence against them?
He thought specifically that black people have lower IQs than white people, and they have higher testosterone levels and lower IQs, which means that's why there's.
Was he calling for violence against them?
Dude, what do you think is the logical connection between all these things and like what the society he wants? He wants it controlled. He wants the state to step in. How do you think the state is going to do that?
He wants the
Is
state
gonna
to step
ask
in.
nightly?
Did he say specifically about that?
Oh my God! Look at this fucking weasel, dude. You mean
No,
when
I'm
he
asking for
like when he,
specific things.
if you were advocating for your
generally
political policies,
draw the line,
that is,
I generally
if you,
draw the line, and when you're making like specific calls to action against people.
all right, this is where like the TOS comes in. Like he can't call directly for violence against these people, or if he did, that's why he got yeeted. But there's a very obvious logical through line between I think these people are degenerate. We need to go back to this policy. This racial group is inferior, and also the Jews are control. There's a very logical through connection between that and either direct violent action or a political system that imposes violence upon them through quote unquote legitimate means. If you are going to weasel out of that and say like, oh, see, he's not calling for violence, he just in his ideal society, none of these people would exist. Like, come on, like say it with your fucking chest. I'd rather talk to Big Papa fascists because at least like say it with his fucking chest.
My main belief is that I don't think you should advocate for violence, and anything other than that, I really don't want to get into like regulating what people can and can't say.
I think being a Republican should be illegal.
Okay.
I think being a Republican should
through
be
like the power of the state.
Illegal. Well, that's what illegal would mean, right?
Right, but like how so? Do you want it to be like finable?
No, I just think it should be illegal.
Or like engage in like wrong thing to be jailed. Like what's your level of addressing this?
I just think it should be illegal.
Societal ill.
I just think it should be illegal. I just don't.
Well, no,
agree with it.
now you need to say it with your chest. Like, what do you think the end result of that should be? What do you think political dissidents should have done?
I didn't say anything. I didn't see anything about it.
You want it to be illegal,
violence.
So let's follow.
I mean, that's it. I just think it should be illegal.
What do you want?
I think I see what's going on. So I think Jangles is trying to demonstrate what other people do as far as controversial views, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
don't think
so. Very obviously, if I want being if I want being
these should be illegal.
Dude, very obviously, if I'm saying that I think being a Republican should be illegal, very obviously, what I'm trying to hint at is that if someone were to try to be a Republican, the state should come down against them. That's very obviously the logical connection between when I said that and like that. But I never had to say it out loud. It's just the only logical connection you can make in your head. So if you think that, legality. Because if you're advocating for political positions, if you say
Vincent James saying that people who are gay or trans should be like deemed criminal for that?
Yes. I'm 90% certain he pushed for the recriminalization of homosexuality.
Explicitly.
All right, I'll look up the doc.
Source?
I'm pretty sure he said
please, thank you.
All right. Let's fucking look it up then. But just before I look it up, all right? If he said that, homosexuality should be recriminalized, is that a call to violence against gay people?
Yeah, I would say so.
Cool, awesome. Let's find it. While I'm looking this up, you have any questions you want from me?
Do you actually believe that these political ideologies should be made illegal?
Nope.
Do you think any political ideology should be made illegal?
It's hard to say because there can be a political ideology that is all about violence, and obviously I don't want violence to be legal. So in that case, no. But a lot of people say like all political ideologies have some sort of violence baked in them because you're imposing laws, and if someone violates those laws, you would have state violence go against them. But no, if a political ideology was like all humans are bad and we must destroy all humans, like obviously that would be bad. It would still be a political ideology, but it would be with one well outside the realms of what I would deem acceptable.
I don't know. I'm just very wary of the state making any sort of belief or ideology illegal as long as it's not calling for other people or causing actions that are causing violence.
So
specifically,
there's a line
directly.
There's the line between like deplatforming and making something illegal. There's a very Donald Trump.
Well, no, I don't think that.
So Donald Trump caused the January 6th riots. That is. I'll say he never explicitly called for it. Nope, he never explicitly called for it because he knew he would get like in legal trouble. But his actions were very, very, very obviously leading to that effect. Right. And like anybody who has any brain in their skull will recognize this to be a thing.
And
I'll say that for anybody on the left.
He didn't make any specific demands that they go inside the Capitol.
The election is being stolen from us. Okay. They're taking it from you. They're trying to take the election from you, and you need to go out and
from any of the rhetoric that we heard during like all of RussiaGate stuff.
All of RussiaGate? You think like when they say like Russia? Okay, you're pivoting again.
No, I'm asking.
No. I'm not doing
an analogous example.
It is not analogous. All right. Did anybody like storm the fucking Capitol? Did anybody storm the Capitol? Violently storm the Capitol after like the 2016 election?
No, they just made like specific calls that the current regime was completely illegitimate.
Yeah, and those people were dumb. But the people who were saying like the Russia interfered with the election,
same people that are saying that Trump.
Saying that Russia interfered with the election is just a true statement of fact, and the way they interfered was like influencing like Facebook ads and stuff like that. All right, they didn't interfere with like the electoral process directly. They didn't interfere with.
They specifically said
Trump is saying that it was stole the election. Yeah, that's hyperbolic language, but it was obviously very different. It was obviously very different. No, stop trying to fucking pivot. The way that Trump, because you're doing it again. We're talking about January 6th, and you pivoted to like the subject. Yeah, you are. Like we're talking about January 6th. We're talking about January 6th, and you try to pivot it off to like the RussiaGate conspiracies. That is exactly what you did. That's exactly what you're doing. I want you to answer the question: Why is there like a
examples? I'm talking about hyperbolic.
There's no hyperbolic examples of like Trump. Yeah, Trump said that the election was stolen. Like not that it was influenced by outside forces, but it was stolen by corrupt election officials. That's how he said it was stolen, and that's what we're talking about, right?
Outside forces that are both nefarious.
No, you think both Russia and like election officials, an outside force?
Both casting.
My fucking god, dude! I can't take you seriously.
Okay, well, I guess the feeling's mutual at this point.
All right.
But I am curious, like, how is the rhetoric different when it's the people alleging that Russia stole the election?
Biggest wedge issue. So America First candidate Jerome Bell, this is the first thing I looked up. He said the biggest wedge issues, rampant degeneracy, starting with gay marriage. So he wants gay marriage to be legalized at the very, very least. And he wants it to go backwards to say about any sort of like degeneracy, like non-straight coupling and romance.
Wait, did he say that only gay marriage to be not recognized by the state, or is he saying that all forms of homosexuality to be criminalized?
He wants to work backwards. Gay marriage was like the start of the degeneracy because it was deemed as like a legitimization of same-sex attraction, and so like going backwards from that, he would seek to like criminalize it further. Like this isn't like secret. If you ask Vincent James what he thinks that being gay should be like recriminalized, or if you get him in a state where like he's not going to be violating TOS. That is very obviously like the path.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that now that he's like off of things, and if he's not clearly saying that too, then I don't think he's worried about terms of service conditions.
Jangles, I have a question. What do you think is your most controversial political view? Since you were asking Flamenco.
Here's my most controversial political view. I think that carrying a gun in public is a show of intimidation, and I think that's the barrier for use of self-defense against someone carrying a gun is much lower than someone without it.
In what state?
In that, if you see someone carrying a gun, I think the barrier for what constitutes as self-defense against the person carrying the gun is much lower than someone who is unarmed. Because that person.
So do you think that like unprovoked assaults against people open carrying are legitimate?
No, I just think what counts as provocation is much lower.
What would you consider provocation?
If I get into an argument with someone else and I see that they have a gun, I'm going to be much quicker to engage in violence to stop them, including lethal violence, because they have a gun. So if they just
get into like an argument with you, then that's provocation.
The barrier
assault?
No, the barrier for like if I think things are getting heated, I'm going to have a much lower barrier for what constitutes as provocation. Not that you can just randomly assault people, but hey, that was my controversial opinion.
So
no, I don't think you should insult people either.
quick thing. The reason why I'm asking is because you would ask Flamenco for, what his political opinions are that might get him into trouble, right? I'm not sure that what you have stated, Jangles, is something that could get you into trouble either, really, right?
I don't have super radical opinions.
Okay.
I'm not as far. I'm not as well. You said you did. I didn't. I never said I had radical
I
opinions.
believe that they are held to be things that go against the status quo, and therefore can be means in which people attack me.
Do you think that the kill stream had any like controversial opinions that they routinely espoused?
As like his own stuff, like Ralph's own show, or
Yeah,
as like
his
the
own
guests who
show.
were on.
Well, those are two different things.
No,
Like,
that's
who you
why I'm
bring on your
asking for
show?
Which one? Whoever would go on at that point. Honestly.
Ethan Ralph
Uh-huh.
says he's alt-right. He said it explicitly.
Yeah, but
said
Ralph
he
is
is an
also
alt-right
trying.
person.
Actually, I don't think Ralph would say. I don't think
He
at least
said
right
it
now, I don't
explicitly
think
in a
he would
HuffPost
call-
interview after he
No,
was
no, no,
arrested.
no. I'm saying like right now, I don't think Ralph would like identify himself as alt-right simply because he's trying to cozy up to Fuentes, and he's like explicitly anti-alt-right as like the branding thing in terms of like personal feuds.
Yeah, I know, like whatever will get him the most clout is what he'll do. But no, he has
Yeah,
said
probably.
he's alt-right before.
Yeah, exactly.
He's also-
I think Ralph. I think that's what
he's
Ralph's
also-
current thing is right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like the fact that he's cozying up to Fuentes is like
Okay.
Fuentes is a Nazi.
Um.
Unless your definition of Nazi is like literally a 1940s like German socialist party member, like he's a Nazi. In any sort of like modern definition of the term, he is a Nazi.
I mean, modern definitions are like caused by the people who are like currently like bitching about things on
do you
Twitter.
think-
So
I'm
I don't know.
sorry,
I
like-
don't think Twitter's a real place.
What does a Nazi look like to you?
If they're like specifically calling for like the extermination of people, then I would definitely say that there's that's definitely a flag.
Well,
Wait, it's just a flag. It's not an indication that they are Nazi. It's just like,
what
they're
if-
calling for the extermination of Jews.
What
Well,
about
I mean, like,
skepticism?
I don't
Sus.
think I don't think.
What
that,
about
like, black
Holocaust
nationalists that are calling
skepticism?
for the extermination of white people are Nazis? You know what I mean?
So what about Holocaust skepticism? Would you consider that like skepticism around numbers of people, victims of the Holocaust?
I think that's more revisionism, right? I think that like outright denying it, sure, but like
if you
you're
didn't
getting
think
into, like
that
the
many
minutia
cookies-
about specific things, maybe.
If you don't think that many cookies could have been baked in those ovens, do you think that might be a little bit of a sign?
Do you think that that was like a deeply held personal belief, or if that was just a joke that was inside of those spheres already?
It was a joke meant to obfuscate TOS to whistle his genuine beliefs.
genuine beliefs.
Yep. This notion that if you're joking, it can't belie some underlying belief.
I
or
don't know
something.
if that's how in jokes work, because like you don't necessarily even have to believe it to
I'm
like
sorry, do you tell-
understand what the joke is about and then like giggle about it. I guess I don't know.
He has a far. Would you at least admit he has a far right audience?
Oh yeah, he definitely has a far right audience.
Do you think there's maybe a difference, like how you should interpret a joke meant for a far right audience from a far right figure, like the same
Depends on
exact
what the
joke?
humor that goes around in those spheres is.
Okay, if you told that exact same joke in a pretty far left sphere, the joke would be like, obviously, I'm making fun of Nazis. In his case, he's not making fun of Nazis.
Would
he's
it? Like, I
dog-whistling to
think
his
it would
arguments.
probably like fly over the heads of like most normies, and I don't even
Yeah,
know
most
if people
normies.
on
That's
the
why I'm
left
talking
would
about, like,
actually,
far left
get
and far
what's
right
going on
spaces.
with that joke.
Yeah, that's why I'm talking about far left and far right spaces. All right. Yeah, this is like the WEASEL shit, dude. Like
Well,
he was
too-
obviously
I don't
like
think so.
dog whistling in Holocaust denial.
To be
Okay.
fair, right? I have noticed. I think if you go far left enough or far right enough, you do encounter anti-Semitism of some kind, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean,
But like, I don't necessarily know if like, do you just have to be like anti-Semitic to be a Nazi now, or is that what's one of the?
well, I think
qualifiers?
anti-Semitism is still very problematic in its own right. It's
sure.
a form of racism, right?
Yeah,
If you
sure.
want to like, you can be a fascist without being a Nazi, but at that point we're like using a semantic difference.
Well, I
functioning
think
in the
like
United
if we're talking about the
States.
terminology, definitely, and also like the United States has like fucking insane people that go on about like how it's literally going to be the fucking third or the Fourth Reich if like Trump gets reelected or anything like that. Like I don't necessarily know how like
Yeah, and there are people who
useful
think we
as
live in a
terminology
communist.
that is.
Yeah, and people think we live in a communist dictatorship with Joe
Okay,
Biden.
so we can both acknowledge that both of those things
Yeah,
are
those
completely unhinged, right?
Yeah, well, there are stepping stones towards fascism that
Oh,
Americans
okay.
always like
So
in there.
you have
We've never
special
been close to
preferential
communism.
treatment. You have special preferential treatment towards.
Do you think like
certain
do you think
gotcha.
like the true path is perfect centrism?
Uh,
No, an objective like a moderately objective reading of reality said we've never been close to communism. We have touched fascism a few times.
how?
We've gotten close.
How so?
All right, so this notion, like especially like right after right before World War II. Sorry, right
Mhm.
before World War II, we kind of liked the Nazis. If you looked at like,
Mhm.
if you looked at the American sentiment towards the Nazis, towards Hitler, it was pretty favorable. If you looked
Was
at
it
American
favorable or was it
Pretty
like
no,
the U.S.
favorable.
like willingness to
Favorable.
get involved in another war was?
I
pretty low?
specifically chose my words. They were
Mhm.
favorable to the Nazi
Okay.
Party. Favorable in
How favorable-
large numbers.
How favorable were they towards the Soviet Union at that point?
Not very favorable.
Hmm.
Or at least less favorable to like to Hitler and Nazi Germany. Like seriously,
Wasn't,
America
like,
was
wasn't
not.
the US
America
providing-
did
wasn't-
not. America
wasn't the
did not
US, like,
hate the Nazi
providing-
Party prior to like World War II properly started.
Mhm.
We did not hate them. They had the same ideas, the same like ideology. Yeah, they weren't like murdering people in the streets, but the ideology was absolutely there. And like a
Wait,
lot,
what
any sort
aspects
of
the
every single,
ideology
like-
were popular.
they thought maybe the Jews kind of aren't invasive species. Maybe the white man kind of does deserve to be at the top of other races. Maybe all these other races that aren't white are invading us and like polluting our gene pool. And maybe like that we do have
Then
like the
why would the
Aryan
U.S.
Ubermensch.
government? Why would the U.S. government militarily support the?
I'm
Allies?
talking about the politics, like the overall opinions of like the average person. Like yeah,
Okay,
of course.
but,
Yeah,
like,
and this was
If we're
before. Like,
talking about the overall.
yeah, a few
politics
years
of the
later, when like there was a war
average
going
person-
on, and like they were attacking one of our main
No,
allies, and they
we were-
bombed our like naval base. Like yeah,
we were-
then
we
things
were
changed,
supporting
and the
the
military
Allies
people got
well
in.
bef-
But I'm sorry
we
that
were
you had nothing to
supporting
say that like why America, like the American populace, kind of liked Nazi Germany.
Except we were
in, like, the
supporting the
1930s.
Allies well before Pearl Harbor. What the fuck are you talking
Yeah,
about?
well before that, and well before that, when Nazi Germany was like starting to become a thing, like Hitler was like present, like and known way before like World War II. Like America
Mhm.
didn't really fucking hate him. Like they thought they had it pretty good. The fact that we
Okay,
also called like
like,
any sort of
what
like
did we
equality
know
movement in the
about-
United States as
what did-
communist. Hold on.
Wait, what?
So right after World War II, any sort of like social equality movement, like the civil rights movement, everyone attacked Martin Luther King because he was a disruptor. He was a communist.
Mhm.
He was trying to like it was like the modern parallel to like the CRT movement. Like they tried to attack
Okay.
him as communist because race mixing or like anti-racism has always been seen as like a communist infiltration of American ideals. Like there's a lot of like sentiment.
You
can
do
build
know
up.
that the Soviet Union was engaged in like subversion in like a multitude of different aspects of America at that time, right?
Yeah, in the same way that like that Russia was doing the same thing in 2016. They weren't creating anything. They were like underpinning what's already there. And you know what? If that's what they were doing,
I
hold
don't
on.
necessarily
If the
know if
Soviet
that's
was,
true.
if the Soviet Union was saying that America's a racist nation and that maybe it is
Mhm.
kind of hypocritical that they say that they're the land of the free and yet all these black people don't have the same rights, I don't know, dude. Looks like they were right.
Okay, but like, why are they doing that? Are they doing that to like
To undermine
just
American
foster
democracy.
beliefs, or are they
What, to
just
undermine
doing
American-
that to? Are
Like,
they
I'm
doing
I'm
that
not
to,
saying they
like,
weren't trying to undermine American
crush a
democracy. They absolutely
international
were, but they had a
rival that
fucking
were
point, didn't
engaged
they?
in conflicts at.
Dude, I'm not saying that they were like.
So wait, does that mean that you can't like portray the Soviets as bad people in media because they had a point?
Dude, that's so fucking stupid.
How? It's a callback to what we were talking about just a second ago. Well, about an hour ago.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the fact that you think like no, let's look at like a fictional piece of media and let's look at real
Mhm.
life history. Oh well, in fiction, if you create a people, you can't criticize them for being bad if they use real world analogy. And now you're saying like, oh, you want to read history? Something
What?
that actually happened? No, the fact that you're trying to like
you don't think that there's like historical period dramas in history and
yeah,
fiction?
period dramas, but they're still fictionalized. The fact that you're trying to compare
Right.
like
I'm asking,
the
can you
fact-
make fiction? Can you make fictional
the fact-
Soviets the bad guys? 'Cause
Yes,
seem
you
to have, like, a lot of
can.
sympathy towards
Yeah,
them.
you can, but I
Okay,
wasn't
good.
talking about fictional Soviets. I was
I'm just
talking about
making sure.
actual history.
I'm just
Why did
making
you think
sure.
that that was a good thing to compare? Why did you say that on purpose out loud?
Because you're bringing up that the Soviets had a point.
I'm saying that if the Soviets were like bringing up this point, and it wasn't just the Soviets, like the Americans were like really concerned about how they were going to look on a world stage if they were like the big freedom boys and we're all for equality and liberty, but also there's an entire racial group of people that we subjugated for the past like entirety of our country's history. We haven't given them full and equal rights yet. Yeah, I'm saying like maybe anybody who like would have criticized America for that, maybe they fucking had a point. And in fact, that's why the civil rights movement was like got popularity and like why it was pushed through Congress, because we would have looked fucking bad if we were the country for freedom, but we still didn't let black people use the same water fountains as us.
Okay, I'm just saying that like I was just specifically saying that like it's already like a known fact that the Soviet Union was trying to like influence like various aspects and trying to undermine the
sounds
US.
like a Russian conspiracy to me.
No, there's like ledgers about them specifically.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but also they didn't create.
There's like a deliberate.
I need to ask you: do you think that? Do you think that
they tried to influence?
I need to ask you: do you think that anything they said like didn't already exist? Do you think that maybe people were already aware of racial conflict, and maybe black people were already aware that they were not getting the American dream that they were promised? Especially maybe a group of people who just came back from fighting a war.
Will you acknowledge
a group of people who just came back from fighting
the civil rights movement?
Why didn't you answer my question? Why
Why
didn't you answer my question? Why didn't you answer my question?
Well, because I want to ask you that specific.
No. I will not answer a question until you answer mine. Do you think that maybe there was a point? All right. Do you think that maybe there was already racial animosity in America post World War II, especially from a group of black soldiers who came back fighting from their country and still did not have access to the GI Bill, or most of the benefits of the GI Bill, didn't have access to housing, didn't have access to the same spaces as their like white like compatriots? Do you think that maybe there was already a racial underpinning, a racial undercurrent of animosity that was not introduced by the Soviets?
Yeah, sure. Do you think that there's like a particular aspect of people who were criticizing the civil rights movement that were accurately pointing out Soviet influence?
No. Here's why.
Really?
Because something being influenced by the Soviets doesn't make it bad. Like that was their go-to argument. It's what it is for civil rights today. Like then they would call it communism, and communism bad. Doesn't matter if it's communism, is it good or not? I just like James Lindsay will say like CRT is Marxist. Doesn't matter if it's Marxist. Is it good or bad? Like that's not good enough, and that's obfuscation from talking about the actual issues.
I think that specific declaration that's Marxist is a complaint that he believes that Marxism is bad, probably.
Yeah, it's conflated with.
But
bad.
he's probably like a massively like.
And that's the thing, like they couldn't
collectivist.
Yeah,
so
I know,
and
you
be,
cannot.
Like, the aspect of it too.
Yeah, and you can't simultaneously say that one of the American values is freedom and equality. You can't simultaneously hold that, while also like, well, oh no, well, there's an entire racial group of people. You can't simultaneously hold those two positions. So what you do, you obfuscate to deal with cognitive dissonance to say that no, if we already have civil rights, everybody's treated equally. It must be a communist influence. That's what happened then, and it's in large part what's happening now.
Well, no, except with the communist influence, it was specifically like directed, like there were like Soviet agents working within there.
Again, but if they were, what were they saying that wasn't already present, and what were they saying more importantly that was incorrect?
I'm gonna guess that the main reason that the Soviets were doing anything that they were doing during the Cold War was to like destabilize the U.S. And I think people can like say that maybe destabilization of the U.S. was slightly worse, maybe than that, I would say.
And you know what? Yeah, you know how the U.S. dealt with that? They passed the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Passed civil rights legislation.
Yeah.
Something they should have done from the get-go. And maybe if it took the threat of destabilization to pass that, maybe that's a fucking mark in our history. That should be a source of deep shame.
Was that like the only reason that people were doing it was because of Soviet influence?
I didn't say that, you did.
No, I think.
And no, it's a big part of the reason it went through when it did is because of like America's like influence on the world stage. Because it was such an easy target, not just the Soviet Union. Any nation could point to like America as like, you fucking subjugate half your people for having a different skin color. Any nation could point to that and say that. Yeah,
but yeah.
A huge portion of the nations we were in, that was an easy point of contention, an easy and an irrefutable criticism of the United States. If you want to lead the free world, you can't also lead the free world by like subjugating an entire race of people within your own country. That was an easy point of reference, and that's one of the reasons. That's that interest convergence that the critical race theory talks about. That's that interest convergence about why it was passed when it was. This notion that racism bad did not originate in 1964. People knew it was bad, but people were pushing for the status quo. They were more comfortable with it, and didn't like. And they outwardly stated egalitarian beliefs, but anytime those beliefs would actually be put into practice, like suddenly they got real uncomfortable.
I don't know about. I'd have to like look up and like what was the attitudes towards like these sorts of things before then, because I don't necessarily know what the actual like sentiments were like pre-World War II in terms of race relations in the U.S.
Yeah, in 1965, the year after the Civil Rights Movement, the vast majority, 85% of white Americans thought that civil rights were occurring too quickly in the United States. It was the year after the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement just made sure that like people like shared the same spaces. This is not a new sentiment. The Soviets did not have to interject this. All right, they didn't have to interject it. It was a long-standing. That is America's history right there.
I'd still have to look it up, but okay. I don't know. I guess the main complaint also with that would be the when it comes to the way that the civil rights movement had, I guess, originated. I don't know. I don't know what the actual like. I don't know what the actual like.
Do you think the civil rights movement was bad?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, that's good at least.
I mean, like, I think that like if people were engaging in like acts of violence for it, then yeah, probably like there was a bad aspect of it. No. But I generally think that unprovoked violence is a bad thing.
You think unprovoked violence could also be done by the state onto a marginalized group of people?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think Stonewall riots were bad?
I don't know the whole aspect of that specifically. So I don't know on that one.
Okay.
I need to actually like read up on like the specific aspects of like what was going on there, because like I don't know, it fucking people reporting on things can lead to like very weird outcomes, and it just depends on like what the actual facts of the matter were. You know what I mean? Because you get that difference between like, oh, Jacob Blake was shot like 7 times in the back, and then it's just like, oh, Jacob Blake was, you know, violating a restraining order against a woman who filed sexual assault claims against him and was trying to get into a car that had 3 kids that he didn't have custody over. So like the reporting on it specifically matters, and also like who's reporting on it basis.
Sorry, I zoned out for a second. I asked you a question about Stonewall. I come back and you're talking about Jacob Blake.
Right. I'm saying that the reporting on these things can definitely influence on how it is, and who's specifically saying that can also.
Is that a big problem with American history? Do you think?
I mean, like, is American history written by the same people that like write news?
Do you think that like the sources of news that you would typically get, who would have access to writing news? So not obviously we're in a different age with the internet, and even a few years ago before the internet.
I mean, would you like?
But
would you say the first-hand accounts
the people
of
who
that
like
versus
described the people who like described historical events were probably people in power, who are people who or at the very least people who had more power. Yeah, but primary sources.
I think
primary sources are also going to be like
sources too.
Yeah, but primary sources are going to be very different when you're looking from like 200 years ago. It's usually going to be like a direct newspaper source, but again, like they're going to have like they're going to have a much more strict adherence to the status quo at the time, and when they didn't, it's still only going to be one source, which is way different than now when like you can have a billion different sources over the same event.
Right, exactly.
But there's also like the notion that like it's probably like who writes history. What's the average person going to think about George Washington in 1779?
Right, but would you agree that the people who are talking about specific things that happen might also have their own particular interpretation and biases that go into that? Because like I'm going to guess that like a person who's like I'm going to guess that a person that is in like the like gay civil rights movement might have a different take on it as opposed to a person who's not in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. It's a big problem with like American history. People want to venerate the American founding fathers as like these gods among men, when in actuality they were okay. They kind like for the time they were pretty okay, but they kind of sucked by today's standards. There's also the notion like the Stonewall
riots, like an aspect of like people doing the best with what they had. You know what I mean? I think that judging people from a current sensibility thing is like a really fucking weird way to look at history in general.
What's a weird way to look at history?
Just any sort of nuance, honestly.
So, I have to cut this short, guys. I'm sorry.
All right.
But it was an interesting conversation to listen to. I hope you guys had fun at least.
Was it actually?
I thought it was interesting.
I thought it was interesting.
Okay, yeah. I had fun, but I never. Well, that's how other people see it.
Okay.
Okay,
I thought
cool.
It's great. It's great. All right. Yeah, I gotta prep people for Chaos Cast. So, I will see you guys.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, y'all have a good one.
Thanks. Thank you for
Alright.
joining. I really appreciate it. It was super fun. And if you guys want to set up another thing, you know, or debate with anybody, really, like, I'm still working on, you know, my moderator
call-in
presence,
show.
but yeah. So
The chat seems a little bit divided between us. Like, yeah, we can do a call-in show one day and just scream at people from chat. That'd be fun.
yeah, that would be
I
fun.
don't know.
Would it?
I
I
do
guess I
it
just said it would.
plenty, you know. So
Call-in
yeah,
shows can be really good, but like some people go fucking crazy on those things.
That's
Yeah.
what makes it fun.
Yeah,
Y'all
you never
take
know
it
what you're
easy.
gonna get. Oh, I do have a quick question before you go, Jangles.
Yep.
Like, do you have like some sort of like crush on James Lindsay or something? You
No,
brought him
I
up like a bunch of times. I don't know
I
what's
brought him
going
up
on with that shit.
once. I brought him up
Brought him up a
once.
couple of times. I
Yeah,
think,
well,
right?
no, I brought him up once just because he's on my mind because I went to a live panel with him 3 weeks
Oh,
ago.
okay.
Yeah, he's on my because I debated him like 3 weeks ago in Texas.
All I know about him is I think he's like I'm pretty sure he's read Moldbug, so I don't know.
Moldbug?
Yeah, I mentioned Moldbug. Because I think
I don't know what that
Lindsay's
is.
like
If you-
specifically made allusions to the cathedral, so I don't know.
That feels like you're setting me up for an uptalk situation.
It's just like the idea that like real power in America is held by like a combination of media outlets, academics, and like other aspects, as opposed to like direct political power in terms of like the government. Like this is the social power is like the hierarchy, I guess, which I would probably agree with.
Okay.
I don't know. It gets into like weird like esoteric shit. So yeah. All right, I'm gonna peace out. I've got like more post Rittenhouse celebration to get to. So I hope you guys have a great night. And one person in my chat says that you look pretty, Stardust. So.
oh, thank you. I'm
Do I not
glad
look
that they.
pretty to your chats?
I think you look pretty
I think
flamenco.
the broad majority of my audience
sorry,
is
Jangles.
male
Sorry.
Okay.
and
fine.
probably heterosexual, so they probably don't.
You know, I
really
could have
an
I could have used
opinion.
that too, but whatever, that's fine.
Jangles, I think you look very
Yeah.
pretty. Flamenco, I think you look very pretty as well. So
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
I've
you.
got a pretty voice.
Peace out, y'all.